All right, guys, reporting once again from Hustler Casino Live. You guys have probably never seen this particular angle. My phone is on the table, and that's because I'm early today. I showed up like an hour early, just due to some scheduling stuff, so I'm kind of just hanging out, waiting for everyone to show up. Today the game is 25.50 with a 30K cap. It's a wacky Wednesday, which we've featured on this channel before. But after the halfway point of the session, the cap comes off. Or if someone gets stuck, 50K. Those are the only two ways that the cap comes off this game. And it happens usually before the halfway point every time. Before we jump into the hands, I wanted to remind you all that I will be hosting a meetup game online on Clubs. If you guys want to join, here are all the details. It's going to be Sunday, July 6th. It's going to be 1-2. It's the sweep coin model. You can play on your phone or your laptop or whatever. I hope to meet at least a few of you guys there, and I have a feeling I might be donating. That aside, let's jump into these hands from Hustler Casino Live. And yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit action heavy today, just based on the lineup. I'll check in with you guys after. All right, guys, once again at Hustler Casino, playing another wacky Wednesday. And one of the things that makes these games wacky, so to speak, are some of the side games that we incorporate. The main one being the bounty game, which is a newer thing we've been trying out. And all it means is if you win 3 hands in a row, everyone at the table owes you $1,000. Sometimes it's $2,000. And even a 4th hand in a row will sometimes get you paid. These rules are usually set before the game starts. Today we're playing 4 in a row, gets you $5,000. 3 in a row gets you $4,000. The reason I'm talking about this is because the first hand of tonight's stream has this exact dynamic in play. There's a couple of limps, and Jay, who is on his second button, also limps in. That means if he wins this hand, he's gonna collect around $7,000 from the rest of us. Gets to me in the big blind, and I look down at pocket 8s. Always a little sketchy out of position with a middling pair, but in this exact situation, I think a raise is in order simply because Jay is going to be priced in to call with a bunch of different hands. So I make it $3,000 trying to go big here. Gets back around to Jay, and after some thought, he decides to limp jam for around $25,000. Back to me, and I pretty much snap call. If he was somehow limping in with a hand better than pocket 8s, credit to him, but I think what he's probably trying to do is get me to fold if I'm a little out of line with something like, whatever, ace 10 offsuit or something. But instead I have a pair, so I call, and just like that, we're starting off this vlog with a $50,000 pot, and we're running it just once. If we win this one, we protect our table mates from paying the bounty, and of course, we collect Jay's 25K, so hopefully no queen out there. And sure enough, it comes clean. So we start off the session with a nice win. In the next hand, action gets to Jeff on the button, and he opens for $2,000. At this point, we've made the 100 straddle part of the blinds. So we're playing 25, 50, 100. That means that he's open for 2,000. That's 20 big blinds. It's pretty big. So when I look down at pocket 6s in the small blind, I decide just to call. I don't really know if I love that, but re-raising against such a big size doesn't seem ideal either. So whatever, I call. Dr. P gets out of the way, and now suited Superman in the last blind gives it some thought before jamming for around 12K. Jeff gets out of the way, but when it gets to me, I am not going anywhere. I've seen enough of suited Superman's work to know that he might just be trying to steal what looks like a free $4,000. So with a pair, I'm going to keep him honest, and sure enough, he was a bit out of line with ace 7 offsuit. Lucky for him though, it's pretty much a flip. Actually, it's exactly a flip. 50% chance from each of us to win this one. But when a 7 comes on the flop, that doesn't look very good. And yeah, we can't improve on turn or river. So we start off the session winning a flip, then we lose a flip. Such is life, but the night is young. Let's keep it going. In this next hand, I've got, guess what? Pocket 7s. That's right, we went from 8s to 6s. Now we have 7s. Here we see a raise from Jay to 1,000, and then Jeff makes it 4,000 in late position. I'm in the small blind, and this time I do decide to come in for a raise. Even though this is going to be a 4-bet, I think Jay is raising a ton of hands, and Jeff doesn't seem like the type to 3-bet good hands only. So already a little dicey to 4-bet with pocket sevens, but this time I decide to go for it. Not something I'd do every time, which I think is worth noting, but I make it 11,000 bucks. Back around to Jay, who folds his king jack offsuit, but as you guys can see, Jeff will not be folding because he's actually got a premium, and he plays it as such. He bumps it up one more time, 27k to go. Back to me now, and I should have probably never even 4-bet in the first place, so now facing a 5-bet, I think we have to let this one go. And that's what I do, so not a ton of action in this hand, but I did manage to lose $11,000 without even seeing a flop, so that's always fun. Moving on. A few hands later, this one comes up where there's a couple of limpers. We have a straddle on for 200, and I look down at 7-5 offsuit on the button and decide to go on an adventure with this hand. I make it $3,000, and let me give you guys a little explanation as to why I'm doing this. First, we're playing the stand-up game, which means if you win a hand, you collect a bounty and you're safe from paying everyone else. Second, I've been a little snug, so I think I'll get some credit. And third, this is probably the best reason, we're on a live stream, and I think splashing around a bit is completely fine. Now, should you do that with a hand like 7-5 off? Probably not, but as long as we bear in mind this is like a 1% frequency type of thing, I think it's fine. So anyway, I make it $3,000 to go. Suited Superman calls in the big blind, and then Jeff also calls with King 5 offsuit, by the way, which just speaks to the fact that, like I said, live streams are not necessarily tutorials on how to play this game, but we're trying to have some fun, and Jeff totally gets that. So he makes the call, Brittany is out of there, and we go 3 ways to a flop of King Jack Deuce with a flush draw. Suited checks, Jeff checks, and obviously I have completely missed this board, but since I did make it 3,000 pre-flop, I feel like I should have some sort of advantage in theory, so I decide to continue betting 3,200 bucks. Obviously would do this with all my strong hands, and I'm hoping these guys understand that. Suited Superman gets out of there with his pocket eights, but Jeff obviously does not, as he has flop top pair. So we're going heads up to a turn card, which is the 4 of clubs. The flush does come in, which doesn't look great, but at the same time, Jeff could very easily have a hand like Queen 10, he could have a jack, he could have a king, all sorts of single pair or straight draw holdings that we could probably now get folds from. Even if he does have a king, he's not going to feel super comfortable in this situation. So when he checks, I continue betting. This time I size up for 8,000 bucks, around half pot, which is my preferred choice on draw heavy boards with flushes available. Not always, but anyway, let's not get too nerdy. I bet half pot, $8,000. And then Jeff calls again. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, what am I doing here with 7-5 off? Perhaps this joke has gone a little too far. But I don't even have time to really process that because the ace of spades comes on the river. Now here's the thing, I know I said he might have Queen 10, but I feel like he would have folded that on the turn, being out of position with Queen high. So I'm not really afraid of the straight coming in. And if he had a flush, I feel like he might have check raised with that draw on the flop, or even check raised the turn once he makes his flush. So what I'm really thinking is Jeff probably just has a king, and this is going to be a brutal run out for him to hang on with just a single pair. At least I would be really uncomfortable in his shoes. So when he checks, I was thinking about just giving up on this one, but this river card is just way too sweet. So I decide to bet again. I assemble a bet of around half pot. I could have Queen 10 myself, certainly, plus a plethora of other hands, and it seems like it gets the job done right away. Jeff no longer likes this situation. He lets go after I bet 18,000, and we get it through with 7-5 off. Not really recommended, but I'm just telling the story. A few hands later, this one comes up where Jeff raises to $2,400 over a limp, again with the big raises on the button, and I kind of like it. Jeff's got some style. Anyway, I call in the big blind with pocket fours, trying to set mine, and now Suited Superman jams all in from the straddle for just around 20,000 bucks. Jay gets out of there, Jeff also gets out of there, and when it gets back around to me, I'm not really in love with this spot, but I am on my second hand in a row, which means if I can win this one, I collect $1,000 from everyone since we're playing the bounty game again at this point. And suited Superman could very easily have 2 overcards against which I would be flipping. Granted, sometimes we are getting it in with just 2 outs if he has a bigger pocket pair, but after some thought, I decide that it's a chance I'm willing to take, so I make the call. And I'm happy to hear that he does not have a pair, so we do have the best hand. If we can win this flip, obviously that would be awesome, because not only do we get 1,000 from each player, but we have the opportunity to win 4,000 from each player if we can manage to win the next hand. Let's see if we can get through this one first, and it doesn't look good. It's an ace-high flop. A little bit of hope on the turn as we find a straight draw, but it's not meant to be. Suited ends up with 2 pair on the river, and we lose this $40,000 pot, which of course the table was quite happy about. A few hands later, this one comes up where I double straddle to 400, and we get 3 or 4 limpers pre-flop. I look down at 7-4 offsuit and decide to just check. And we go multi-way to a flop of 9-6 deuce rainbow. Keep in mind, the big blind in this hand was 400 bucks, so there's 2,500 in the middle, kind of up for grabs. So when 3 of the players check, I decide to take a stab, thinking to myself, no one's going to be that strong on this board. Pocket 9s and pocket 6s, maybe even pocket 2s would have raised pre-flop, and I don't think anyone is limping in with 9-2 or 6-2. Maybe 9-6, but aside from those hands, I think at best someone's going to have a single pair, and we can apply some future pressure against those hands. So I start with a bet of 900 bucks. Worth noting, I could have 9-6, 9 deuce, 6 deuce, all those random 2 pairs because I checked from the straddle. So I throw out this bet and we get a little bit of credit as only Henry and PP make the call. So 3 ways to a turn, which is the Jack of Clubs. This is exactly the type of card I was hoping to see, because if anyone has a 9 or something like 7-8 or 4-3, you know, just these random straight draws, they're all going to fold against a second bet now. Or so I presume. Obviously, I could be wrong. But they both check again, and now I have position against both players, so I don't think a huge bet size is in order. I decided to go a third pot, 1,400, which looking back, I don't really like. I kind of wish I'd gone a bit bigger, but anyway, I bet 1,400. Henry folds his ace high, but PP does not. He makes the call. And now we have $8,000 as we go to a river, which is the King of Hearts. PP checks it a third time. And now it's back to me. What do we want to do with 7 high? We've put ourselves in this situation, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep bluffing. I think it's fine to give up in certain spots, but this is not one of them, mainly because the Jack and the King I don't think will have helped his hand. Instead, I think he's likely just hanging on with a 9. And that's all the excuse I need to stick to my instincts and original plan of going for it. There's 8,000 in the middle. I think an $8,000 bet is the right size for most players, but PP, at least from my experience, is very, very sticky. If you don't know what that means, it's just some silly poker term, which means he doesn't like to fold, even in spots where some others might. In fact, he doesn't like to fold so badly against me that I decide to go for a massive size of triple or quadruple the pot size, which is a thing, by the way, but it's usually not a thing with 7-4 off. Instead, if I had, you know, pocket 2s or something, I might do this as well. But not this time. I've just got 7 high as I bet $30,000. That's right, 30K into 8,000. Not something you should do super often. In fact, even in this situation, it's probably not great. 20,000 might have been a bit better, you know, double the pot. 30,000 is just a lot though, because you're risking a huge expense the times that he does have it. And as you guys can see, he does have it this time. As I get a little unlucky with PP making 2 pair on the river, this innocent looking king was actually not so innocent at all, because he now has kings up. Obviously, I don't know that in the moment, and it seems maybe PP doesn't even know what he has, because he thinks it over for quite some time, gives it a couple minutes, and then eventually, you know, he's obviously going to call, but no. Somehow, he folds. So perhaps my $30,000 maniac bet, which I thought was not a great size, ends up working out to perfection. I guess he didn't want to pay me off if I had a set, but aside from that, I'm not entirely sure what he put me on. Maybe Queen 10, who knows? but he just didn't want to pay off a better hand for $30,000 and decides to make a tight fold. Unfortunately for him, he's up against 7 for offsuit this time, which is pretty funny. Anyway, that was the second hand in a row that I'd won, which means if I'm able to win this next one, we collect the bounty. And that is a pretty good time to pick up a playable hand like pocket sevens. I've straddled for 2,000 just to try to get folds pre-flop, which does not work. Suited Superman raises to 6K. Henry calls the 6K. Jay calls the 6K. And now Brittany jams for 33,000 and change. I'm on her direct left, like I said, looking down at pocket sevens. And I'm happy to gamble against her. She could have smaller pairs, 2 overs, hands like ace 4 of diamonds, for example. So I make the call, hoping that it will look strong to the players behind me and they might fold hands exactly like the ones they've got. And that does end up happening. Suited folds ace 10, Henry folds ace jack, and then Jay folds pocket 4s. So we're gonna go heads up to 2 runouts. She wants to run it twice. I usually don't care. But of course I do want to win the top board, because when you run it twice, that's the one that counts for the side games. So we're off to a run out and the top board looks safe. We end up holding with pocket sevens. Second board also looks safe, and what do you know, we win that one as well. So this was an awesome pot for me. Obviously we stack Brittany, we collect $6,000 from a few players who folded pre-flop, and we get the 1K bounty from everyone else. So I end up winning, I don't even know how much, something like 60,000 plus during this hand. Awesome result. And not just that, but we're now up to bat for the 4th hand in a row. But we get dealt queen 7 offsuit and Jay raises to $15,000 on the button. So I end up just folding. Not going to call 15K with queen 7 off in hopes of winning this side game. Nice hand, Jay. In this next one, I am once more in the $400 straddle. There's a couple limps and then PP makes it 5K to go. It gets to me in the straddle and I look down at 7-6 suited. A beautiful hand in position to the razor since PP is in the big blind. So I think it's worth a 3-bet. Calling is also fine, but I like re-raising a little more just to try to get in position heads up and to balance out the times that I have aces, kings, and the good stuff. You guys have heard it all before. So I make it 15K to go, gets back around to PP, who has around 65,000 to start the hand. And he makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop of 9-9-8 with 1 spade. Pretty good, all things considered, when you have 7 high and the pot is over 30K. We've got a straight draw and of course the backdoor flush draw. Even a 7 or 6 might be good on future cards if he has ace high. So when he checks, I bet a third. I would do this with all my hands. 10,000 into the middle and we get a fold from ace queen of hearts. Not a crazy hand or anything, but we do collect 16,000 in the process, so pretty sweet. And then a few shuffles later, I look down at a real premium, pocket queens. This time a re-raise is once again in order, but it won't really be a bluff. There's a call from Superman for 100, Henry raises to 1,500, and then Jay, also with 7-6 suited, 3-bets to 5,000. Gets to me in the big blind, and look, you guys have seen enough of Jay to know that he's an action player, to say the least. So if he's got kings or aces, he's going to get a full double up. I'm going for the re-raise. I make it 20K to go. Suited Superman folds. Henry, though, out of nowhere, comes in with a call, which I didn't really expect, but I'm thinking this is likely hands like pocket jacks, pocket tens, or maybe ace king offsuit that doesn't want to play a huge pot. So anyway, he makes the call and Jay also makes the call. So just like that, we have a huge pot, 60,000 plus, as we go 3 ways to a pretty decent flop of jack 6 deuce. Always nice with queens when you flop the overpair. But I am a little concerned about the jack. Like I said, Henry might have pocket jacks and even Jay could easily have pocket jacks based on how this one has played so far. So yeah, I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, but an overpair is still an overpair, so I decide to bet for value and protection. 18K into the middle. Henry makes the call, which immediately is sending off some warning signals in my head because he's making this call, which is a hefty bet, and Jay is left to act behind him, so I expect him to have at least top pair, a hand like king jack suited or ace jack suited, something like that. Jay also makes the call, so I'm like, all right, hang on. Am I in trouble here? Well, let's find out. The turn card is the ace of clubs, so things are going from mediocre to worse. Very likely that one of these guys could have the nut flush draw with the diamonds, and now they improve to top pair. Maybe one of them just has ace king and they floated the flop. Ace jack, still very possible. So being out of position against all these hands that suddenly beat me, I decide to check. Henry gives it some thought and then eventually does not check. Instead, he bets 35,000. Jay gets out of the way after thinking it over for a while, which I gotta say is kind of surprising because he's got a pair and a flush draw, plus position, getting a good price. So I don't know what Jay didn't really like about this spot. Well, I guess the obvious answer is the $35,000 it would have cost him to see one more card. But anyway, he's out of there. Back to me now. And even though it would suck to be getting bluffed, I think we just have to fold because I have one of the worst hands I would ever have. Even having the queen of diamonds isn't great because we have removal to potential bluffs like king, queen of diamonds or whatever. So I decide to just let this one go, and it looks like that ace on the turn, even though it looked bad, might have actually saved me some money as Henry did have jacks and flopped top set. Looks like he's having a good night. Meanwhile, I lose $38,000 in this hand, but I guess it could have been worse. A few shuffles later, we encounter this weird spot where PP raises to 500, Jeff makes it 2K on his left, Brittany cold calls the 2K, and then I look down at king 10 of diamonds in the cutoff. Now obviously cold calling here is, I guess, fine, but I think it's actually better to either 4-bet or fold, leaning heavily towards fold, but this is a nice hand to 4-bet bluff with in position. If we face another raise, we can just fold, and if we see a flop, it's got some nice playability. Plus, it's got removal to like ace, king, and kings, so can't be that bad. I decide to go for it this time. I make it $7,000 to go, but this is where things get a little dicey as it gets to PP. Mind you, he's the one who made it 500. He does not fold, so it looks like maybe we're running into a real hand from the original raiser. And we sure are. He's got jacks himself now, but after some thought decides to just call, which I think is understandable. And now Jeff also makes a call, which brings in Brittany, so get no respect here with my $7,000 raise. We have $28,000 in the middle as we go to a flop, which finally brings some much welcomed run good. We smash this board. It's king, king 9 with 1 diamond. Obviously, we might be up against a better king, but I'm not trying to have those thoughts. So PP checks, Jeff checks, Brittany checks, and I'm usually a proponent for just betting strong hands when you have them. But this time I decide to get sneaky and check it back, mainly thinking I would check a bunch of hands being 4 ways. So I check back and we see the 3 of diamonds on the turn, giving me a flush draw to go along with trips. PP checks again, Jeff checks again, Brittany checks again. I'm not going to let this one check through twice. So I put in a bet this time of $11,000. PP makes the call. Meanwhile, Jeff and Brittany fold. I'm thinking to myself, PP called with both Jeff and Brittany left to act behind him, so he's got to have at least a pretty good hand here. So I'm hoping for a clean river on which I can go all in, and it's about as clean as it comes. The 6 of spades, all potential draws missed, and neither of our hand strengths should really change. PP checks, and he's got a little under 40k left. The pot is 50k, so he's got less than a pot-sized bet remaining. If I were bluffing, I would jam all in for that sizing, so I decide to do the same thing with value. We don't get snap called, which is nice. There was a small chance he was, laying in the weeds with pocket 9s or whatever, but he also doesn't fold right away, so it seems he did not have a draw, which of course I think makes sense. Now it's just a question of waiting and seeing whether or not we get the rest of his chips, and it ends up taking him a little bit of time. I don't blame the guy. Pocket jacks in this situation is no fun, but in the end he does decide to fold, which is bad news for me. Good laydown from him as he saves himself 40k, but of course we win 32k in this hand, so not complaining by any means. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the last interesting hand of the night. In this one, I raise it up to pocket kings. We're playing shorthanded. I make it $600. A few players have been eliminated by Henry at this point, who's been on a crazy tear. I make it 600 on the button with kings, and Henry 3-bets from the big blind. He makes it 2200. Back to me, and this hand pretty much plays itself. I'm obviously going to raise again, so I make it 7K. We're sitting pretty deep, so I think Henry is happy to see a flop and try to hit a set with his pocket threes. He makes the call, and we see a board of Jack, 6, deuce with 2 spades. We still have an overpair, and of course the backdoor flush draw. Pretty easy betting spot for me, so when Henry checks, I throw in a bet of 9,000. I decide to go for 2/3 in this spot because there are a few draws out there. If the board was drier, I might size down a bit, but anyway, I put in 9K. And Henry makes the call with his pocket threes, perhaps not believing the story I've been telling, at least not yet. And we see the queen of spades on the turn. Henry checks again. And I think even though the flush has come in, we can continue betting for value here. It's possible he's got a pocket pair with a spade. It's also quite likely he's got just a jack, and now he's not going to want to fold in case, I'm bluffing. So plenty of worse hands to continue targeting. I put in another bet of around half pot, 16,000 bucks. And now Henry is in kind of a nasty spot with threes, knowing that he might be getting bluffed by king 10 or ace 5 suited or whatever. But it's also just so difficult to play his hand out of position, and it seems he agrees because he lets it go. So we don't collect too much money in this one, but obviously anytime you win a decent pot with kings, it's a good time. Anyway, that was the last fun one of the night. Nothing too crazy, but I do think there was a bunch of action hands. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for a few more thoughts before you guys go anywhere. So as expected, tonight was full of wild hands. I don't know what it was. It was just in the air. I had a feeling before the session started that things would get kind of crazy. And they definitely did. Henry won like 600 and something thousand dollars in a 25-50 game. That's absolutely absurd. Good for him after having like 6 months of run bad. But anyways, as for me, I did end up winning also, nothing like Henry, but managed to pull off a $65,000 win, which of course I'm super happy with, especially considering last week where I lost 200. But anyway, that's a wrap for today, guys. Don't forget about the meetup game on July 6th. I hope to meet at least a few of you guys there. If you guys want to play some poker with me, I'll see you guys on there. Until then, good luck at your local tables. Until next time, peace.